Hey, welcome to Wait, That Really Happened, a podcast covering true crime, history, and conspiracy. The bevy for the epi is Sprite, and then you pour over, it's white cranberry and strawberry juice, and it tastes exactly like a Starbucks refresher. Definitely highly recommend trying it. It's really good. I wanted to start out a little more serious for this episode, and I know we are literally only on episode 2, but something I always hoped for this podcast was not to commoditize true crime in the way that it kind of has been and how it's become a spectacle, but use this voice to highlight victims and those related to victims who are affected every day and shed some light on cases that don't get as much attention as they deserve, even though, unfortunately, that's the case for most cases. I really have grappled with whether or not to do cases like these that are open and active because I don't want to reopen old wounds of the families, but this case has been really heartbreaking to read about, and it's been really inspiring to see how much the family has taken charge to keep up the search. Today, we are going to be looking at the missing persons case of Paola Miranda Rosa. This is an active and ongoing case, so there is limited information, but I did my best to find all the details I could. Please be respectful in the comments. I will go through and remove them and remove any that are inappropriate. I truly hope that through this episode, we as a community can bring some revitalized energy to the case, or at least provide a new support system for the families who continue to search on limited resources. Any GoFundMe links will be at the top of the description box, so if you are able to, please consider donating to those, and then any other sources that I used will of course be listed in the description box as well. I came across Paola Miranda Rosa's case on the Missing Persons Center website, and I think honestly what drew me to the case was how little information there actually is. It is still an ongoing investigation, so that obviously makes sense, but it was really hard to tell at face value the timeline, series of events, and where things stand now. So I did a lot of research, and I did the best I could to find out all the information that is open to the public. It's been 3 years since she initially went missing, and as far as I can tell, the main Facebook page that's been spearheading a lot of the volunteer searches has basically grown inactive. While that is the devastating reality of cases like this, I still wanted to do my best to piece together what I could. The biggest source for this was an interview that Paola's sister Andrea did that is posted on YouTube on the Bullhorn Betty channel, and I highly recommend that you go watch it. Paola Miranda Rosa was born December 9th, 1990 to parents Ivana and Gustavo. At the time of her disappearance, she lived in Osceola County, Florida, near much of her family. She is described by her sister to be very intelligent, educated, and well-spoken. She had dogs who she cared for deeply and was never known to have left them alone for very long. At the time of her disappearance, she had already bought them Christmas presents. She was well known among her family to be the fish of the family because she loved water. Sometimes she would even just go to a lake or beach, get out of the car, go take a dip, and come right back. She always had a change of clothes with her in case she happened to take a swim. On the morning of Saturday, December 18th, 2021, Paola's sister Andrea called her and the line rang, but Paola didn't pick up. By 11:30 a.m., however, the phone stopped ringing completely and began going straight to voicemail. This was highly unlike Paola, as she was known to communicate with her sister and mom several times a day. Andrea reached out to Paola's friends, who also said they hadn't been able to reach her all day. By that evening, the family felt that something was definitely wrong. At 5 p.m., no one in Paola's life had heard from her, so they called the police and filed a missing persons report. Since then, no leads have been found, and her case has likely gone cold. Now let's go back and take a look at the movements we know Paola made leading up to this point. The last time she was seen by family was Friday the 17th, eating lunch with her mother, grandmother, and uncle. Later, she went to a scheduled doctor's appointment, and that evening reached out to her sister about going to see her and her niece the next day, which was basically an every weekend occurrence, and she also visited multiple times during the week. On the morning of the 18th, she made an ATM deposit before arriving at the Wekiwa State Park at 8:30 a.m. This is notable because in the case of someone running away, often they make withdrawals to have cash on them. They don't deposit. And the family later accessed ATM transactions via Paola's computer, as well as her e-pass transactions. And everything looked normal. The deposited money looked like it was there to pay for her upcoming pet insurance payment and any money for other bills and anything she would spend during the day or upcoming days. 8:30 is the exact time she arrived at the park that morning, as she was given a stamped receipt that was found later in her car, and that permit to park cost $6. Sometime between 8:30 and 11:30, she walked to Otter Camp, which is 1.7 miles from the parking lot. Around 11:30, she is shown on a video taken by some campers to be wading in the river. If you look up this video yourself, it's super easy to find on the internet. You can see it's not really deep water at all. She actually just stands up. The water looks gentle, the sun is out, and there are no visible dangerous animals or other threats. The campers who took the video said they saw her until the river bended. This is the last confirmed sighting of Paola. There is conflicting information on when and who filed the missing persons report. One source said Andrea did so at 5 p.m. On Saturday, and another said that her mom, Ivana, did at 6 a.m. that Sunday. It is a complete myth that you have to wait 24 to 48 hours before filing a missing persons report. However, just because you file one does not mean the police will immediately respond, which you will see later on. This case would actually start as a joint jurisdiction case with Osceola as the frontrunner and then Orange County assisting with the search, because the park is in Orange County, but Paola was from Osceola. And I have heard endless cases about how Orange County generally drops the ball in so many missing persons cases, and this one was unfortunately no different. The overall word I would use to describe how this case was handled would be lazy. The police were just lazy. The first example being that Ivana's first language is Spanish, but a translator through the department was not provided when she was reporting Paola as a missing person. Andrea actually had to FaceTime her mom while her mom called the police to file the report, and Andrea is worried that some important details were lost in translation, which makes a lot of sense, and I think that that's just like a basic thing that should have been provided, given that Ivana's first language was not English. Like, that just makes sense, especially for filing a missing persons report. There is so little time, and it is so important to get all of the information, and that's just really disappointing. By Monday morning, Andrea felt there was no urgency from the police, who told her they couldn't do anything because they had no leads, so they would wait until the family and volunteers found something to go off of. This is when the family began sending out flyers via social media and organizing their own volunteer search parties. And Andrea also mentioned in her interview that they were not given flyers to post. They had to make their own, print them all out, and post them all themselves. A friend of the family decided they wanted to go search the back, more hidden and hard to get to parking lot of the Wekiwa State Park, but was actually turned around by a park ranger, which was really, it's just like an odd detail that they would turn someone around for that. Had she been allowed to go all the way to the parking lot, she would have found Paola's car much earlier. On Tuesday, a search party met at a Publix near the park and sent volunteers out. A friend and her mom found Paola's car in the back lot that friend had previously tried to get to and reported it to authorities at 3:30 p.m. The volunteer search party of 20 people were there before the sheriffs. They opened the car once to see if Paola was inside sleeping or for some other reason that she might have been there. And when she wasn't, they didn't touch the car anymore and waited for the deputies to arrive. Deputies did not run forensics on the car, as the case was not considered a crime scene at this point. So no fingerprints or DNA was taken, and all of her items were moved. A change of clothes was found, but as I mentioned earlier, she often carried an extra set of clothes because she loved to be in water. Her phone, wallet, and keys were all left in the car. It wasn't abnormal for Paola to leave her keys in the car, as her sister says she has gone to the beach, left keys in the car, got in the water, and come back, but she has never left her phone behind like that before. Andrea thinks Paola may have actually gone back to her car after finding Otter Camp and depositing her phone. Police had Paola's phone for a little bit, but even with 2 different softwares, they were unable to unlock it and access it, and then it locked itself. So it was given back to Andrea, and she is now in possession of it, and it's up to her to figure out how to unlock it herself. The camp, Otter Camp, that Paola was heading towards was somewhat difficult to get to, and Andrea believes that she would have taken her phone to use a GPS since the area was unfamiliar to Paola. It was kind of the only area of the whole park that she doesn't recall Paola ever mentioning having been before. And it's also really confusing to get to because as you're walking up the trail, there is a fork in the road and you can actually get to Otter Camp both ways, but the left fork is a service road and the right fork is the trail, and there are no signs pointing in like the proper direction. So it is really confusing to get there, and you can definitely get turned around. So that's why Andrea believes that it would have made sense for Paola to bring her phone to use as a GPS. There were also security cameras at the front gate of the whole park with a sign that says, "You are being recorded," but they don't actually work. They weren't recording anything. So honestly, that just seems like a hazard for so many reasons. Orange County basically pulled out of the search after just a week, and Osceola searched using new sonar technology in the river on January 6th, which would be great and probably super helpful, but they only searched the same 2 miles 4 times instead of going the length of the whole 8.5-mile span of the river. They also used drones to get a bird's eye view, but it's forest. It's all trees. There's literally no way that would be helpful to track a person. They also searched on horseback, but again, in a forest, there is just so much that can be easily missed if you aren't turning over every leaf and looking at sticks for clothing fibers and, really looking at the ground for footprints. The only piece of evidence they found were shoe prints matching her shoe size, but no other physical pieces of evidence were found. Her family has reached out to various search organizations like Florida Air and Boat Search and Rescue, a group of veterans, Peace River Search and Rescue, and groups of friends, family, and volunteers have all helped as well, but generally the police assistance has ceased. Andrea alone has kayaked the whole 8.5 miles and searched almost every weekend with different volunteer groups and family. There are certified groups that are meant to be quote-unquote activated when situations such as a woman lost in a large state park near a large body of water arise, but Osceola County didn't pass on the case information to these groups, which caused a lot of frustration from both the family and from the groups because that is what they're meant for and that's what they are equipped for to specialize in. So I think that they really missed out on the opportunity to have some really detailed searching because they didn't pass on the case information. There also has been very minimal communication from police to the family, and there is only one detective designated on this case from Osceola County. There is one final piece of information that was never supposed to be publicly released. Actually, it violates HIPAA because it was confidential medical information that they released. But it was given to the sheriff confidentially by Andrea, basically just to relay to detectives that Paola was in a vulnerable state. All I will say about it is what she stated in the Bullhorn Betty interview, which is that she was experiencing some medical conditions that could have caused her to become disoriented, potentially have a seizure. I really empathize with Andrea because in her interview, she talks about how the sheriffs could use this information to paint a narrative about a mentally unstable person who didn't want to be found, which is just not true and is so unfortunate that so many cases become that. It very rarely is a situation where the mental health of someone or the physical health of someone ever really comes into play. It was also really heartbreaking towards the end of the interview. Andrea talked about how Paola wouldn't have left her dogs behind or gone so long without communication to her family. And it really broke my heart as Andrea talked about all the exciting things coming up in Paola's life. Her niece's first Christmas, her family coming to visit. Sometimes detectives just really don't know best because they don't know a missing person personally. And I think that that was something that was missed. That concept was missed, and a lot of possibilities were brushed off because of it. So her health could have had some impact on the situation, but I'll talk about it in theories in a second. I just find it to be unlikely, or at least unlikely that they would have found nothing if it was. Paola is qualified for a purple alert, which is like an amber alert for people with mental and cognitive disabilities, but I do not believe that that has gone through at all. Now let's get into the theories. Now, no one in Paola's family or on the Bullhorn Betty team, who also helped search, believe that this was an animal attack, and I completely agree. There is a caution alligator sign near the water by Otter Camp. However, this area is the most highly recommended section of the park to swim in, according to park volunteers and park rangers, because it is the clearest and nicest body of water. It was also not the season for alligators to be aggressive. Also, Paola was a Floridian. The dangers of the animals in the area were not foreign to her at all. Since there is water involved, some people think she may have drowned. I highly, highly doubt that that is what happened. Many areas downstream are shallow. There's a sandbar that you get to eventually, along with areas very often occupied by campers, like right on the river bank, because it is such a nice part of the park. And then further along the river, there's a lot of plants and vegetation you could grab onto if you needed to. But even in the video, you can tell it's very gentle waters, and Paola literally stands up. Something interesting that I found on the Facebook page, Finding Paola Miranda, is a post that states that 2 different witnesses saw Paola being forced into a 4-door white car, and they called for the sheriff department to review security camera footage from local businesses. From what I could find, no one ever did so, or at least nothing about that was released to the public. And another fumbled piece of information was that witnesses say she was seen at a gas station in Mount Dora, but despite demands from the public to review the security camera footage, by the time investigators were ready to look at it, it no longer existed. It was wiped. The final possible theory is that it had something to do with the person that she was seeing. Now, she wasn't confirmed to be dating this person, so I don't want to say that it was her boyfriend, and there's no information on who this person is out there on the internet because it's not a criminal investigation, so there's no reason for him to be. But Andrea said in her interview that this person's response and reaction to Paola missing was very suspicious. He didn't reach out to help give information. He didn't reach out to help with the search. Very hands off, and she found that very, very odd. And I think that that would tie in that car witness, the people who witnessed the car situation with her being in the car. I think that would make a little more sense to tie a person to why that would have happened, why someone may have seen that, because it doesn't really make sense for her to just go to the park. I mean, I guess anything is possible in this world, but typically there's some kind of personal connection that causes something like that to happen. I know human trafficking and sex trafficking has been mentioned as well. So that piece would make a little more sense in connecting it to a personal interaction and not her just getting lost in the woods. I definitely think, though, that he needs to be questioned and checked out. The team from Bullhorn Betty wrote in the description of the YouTube interview that they believe foul play is suspected. And after all the research I've seen, I find it really hard to believe that it wouldn't be foul play. The search efforts that took place via volunteers and family was extremely extensive. And I think that if it had been some kind of medical emergency or she had just gotten lost, they would have found something. Something would have been left behind, some article of clothing. You know, like it doesn't make sense for her to just completely disappear. The big question that I have is, did she go to Otter Camp with her phone as a GPS, go back to her car, and then go back to Otter Camp? How did she get to Otter Camp the first time if she wasn't using a GPS? And then second, I think the phone is so important. Phones are the key to everybody's personal lives. And if something suspicious was going on in her personal life, that needs to be known, and we need to help unlock her phone. And then third, security camera footage. It's so important to get that early on because it can just, be wiped, disappear, whatever. And that can hold so much vital information, even just like snippets of a car, someone walking. It's all the little details that no one sees in a moment that can be vital in determining what happened to someone. That is all I have for this case. I hope this episode has brought some new awareness to Paola and her family. If you are aware of this case and are in the area, keep an eye out. And if you're not nearby and would like to help, as I said, I'll link the GoFundMe in the description box. For any true crime cases, I think it would be inappropriate to end with a Reddit post reading, so I will leave it there today. If you have any cases, conspiracies, historical moments, or updates to previous cases that I have gone over, feel free to email me or leave them in a comment on Apple or Instagram. My email is wtrhappened@gmail.com, and my Instagram is thesocialbutterflywtrh. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great rest of your day.